Hello everyone, welcome to episode 74 of Show For You, where today we'll be going over the Netflix anime series Devilman Crybaby. Now, this series, I picked it up because I heard my girlfriend said she had enjoyed it, and I just kind of heard some other stuff about it, and I also saw one of the OVAs from I believe it was like the early 90s, late 80s, and I thought, hey, that looks pretty good, so I'm going to check this one out since it was a complete adaptation of the canonical manga. So, I decided to pick it up, and it was pretty good. I'll just kind of go over it briefly here, but, so, the story starts off with us getting introduced to Akira Fudo. Now, Akira is a young man who has grown up kind of with another family because his family, or the Makimura family, because the Makimura family is the family he grew up with, but his family is composed of two doctors. His parents are both doctors, and they're traveling doctors, so they've left him, and he's grown up with the Makimura family for about 10 years. But in his early childhood, he had a friend by the name of Rio, and we actually get to see Rio quite a bit throughout the series. But, so we kind of start off, and we see as kind of Akira is kind of going to school and all of that, doing normal kid things. And one day, when he's out on a dock, he gets approached by these, like, a bunch of rappers, and they're kind of harassing, well, he doesn't get approached by them, but he is in the area while Miki Makimura, who is essentially his like adoptive sister, she's the daughter of the Makimura family. She's a very popular runner. She is wide known, she's famous, and she's a very good runner. She runs relay, and they only ever showed relay, but she practiced, like, I presume 100 meter quite a bit. But, yeah, so we see this, and at the moment, they are, like, harassing her a little bit. They're like, yo, are you Miki Makimura? And he is in a little boat, and he's like, yo, I'm here. And they're like, yo, where you come from? And he's like, I'm a mermaid. It was kind of stupid. But then, ultimately, as they're kind of harassing, about to, like, ruffle up Akira a little bit, we see as Rio pulls up in this white car, full white suit. It comes, and he's, Akira obviously realizes him. He's like, yo, it's Rio. He runs up, gives him a hug, and then they get to talking, and Rio just guns down like a hole in the bridge, and they end up going off. And they kind of meet back up a little bit, talk about stuff that's going on, and ultimately, Rio reveals to Akira that some paranormal sightings have been going on at these absurd parties called Sabbaths, and they are like wild, drug-induced, no good thing going on parties, ne'er-do-well parties. And so they ultimately agreed that they're going to go and research one of these to look into the possibility of demons and devils, because Rio reveals to Akira that he was in South America for a while, and while he was doing this, he ended up with a researcher who was researching demons and devils in this South American village, and ultimately he was possessed, and he killed himself right in front of Rio. So Rio is now looking into the possibility of devils more and more. So we see as they end up going to this party, and stuff gets crazy and all of that, and then Rio gets going around, and he's like, well, we gotta draw the demons through the scent of blood. So he busts up a bottle, and he stabs a woman in the chest, and not really like a deep one, just like an artificial one to let some blood out. But still, he just straight up stabs someone. And we see as ultimately demons do start coming out because they're attracted to the blood. And we see as Akira is about attacked and he's almost killed. But then Rio is like, Amon, this is the time to take over Akira and become a devil man, essentially. But Akira ends up getting taken over by Amon, and they combine to make this devil being from Akira, and he ends up clearing out the devils in that area. So, during all of this, they end up going, and ultimately kind of, we see as Akira's body actually changes. He goes from like a more like, I don't really know how to explain this, like small, kind of softish looking individual to a more muscular, tall, kind of chiseled, of a teen. But then, because I mean he's a high schooler, but yeah, so we see this, and throughout all of it, we kind of see as he goes about his school day, his like appearance has changed, but so has his demeanor and everything. He's eating a lot more. Everyone's noticing, and they're like, "Whoa, what's up with him?" And the girls are fawning over him and everything. But yeah, so we see this immense change, and the second episode is kind of him dealing with it and all of that stuff. But now that he has Amon within him, Rio's like, okay, so now that we have a devil on our side, we can actually hunt the devils more effectively. So they trade on these devils through this priest that they were like, they found him and they ate him, And they ultimately go up and find these devils. And during this, Akira changes into Devilman, and he ultimately beats the devils there. However, during all of this, there's a recorder. And this recorder is a photographer who works with a studio who has been responsible for taking pictures of Miki previously. Now, this dude is a sleazeball. He is a pervert, and he wants to get nefarious photos of Miki, and because that is what his higher up is asking of him. But so we see as he actually records this, and now he has evidence of demons being real. So Akira and Ryo are like, we cannot allow this to be out there. So they ultimately go up and try this man down. They end up going to his house, and they meet up with his old mom, and they're like, yo, let me in the top room. And Ryo's kind of rough with the mom, but Akira's kind of kind with her, so it's kind of contrast him. And they ultimately end up acquiring the location of where this man is. They get the photos off of his laptop and all of that, and everything's good. However, they ultimately still end up going to find him at his studio, because Miki went to his studio, and she was showing in there. She had to take a shower because it was raining bad by the time she got there. So she went, took a bath, and we see as the dude is trying to peep on her. And we also see he's oddly frothing at the mouth. And during this, we ultimately see as a demon is released from his innards, and it goes into the bathroom and ultimately ends up taking over Miki. So we see as though the events kind of go down, and ultimately Akira and Ryo show up, and they have to get this demon out of Miki, while also having to fight another demon in the form of the kind of higher up dude for the photographer. So they have to fight two demons here, and they ultimately able to end up kill that one. And when it comes down to Miki, Akira obviously does not want to kill her because she's essentially his sister, but Ryo's like, you have to kill her, and ultimately Ryo's like, no, I'm not doing that. So it's ultimately denied, and Ryo ends up going off safely with Miki and is able to get the demon out of her. Now, then after this, we kind of see some more of the Makimura family stuff. We see as they kind of interact with Akira, and we learn that Akira's parents are friends at the Makimura family, and that's why Akira has been staying with them. And we learn that their characters are coming back to town for a little bit. So we see this, and while on an airplane, they're just kind of traveling, and ultimately they get on a bus. And once they get on this bus, Akira's dad turns into a demon, or a devil. And so, doing this, he kills all the people on the bus, and he ultimately ends up killing Akira's mother as well. Now, after this, we see as Akira pulls up on the scene at the it's in some storage unit or something like that. He ends up pulling up, and he has to grapple with fighting his dad, because his dad, it is his dad to begin with, but also he's been using death masks of the people he killed to get them to communicate, so his mom's talking to him as well. So you see him kind of struggle with it, and he's obviously crying and all that. That's a consistent theme with Akira, is he's always crying because he's Devilman and he's a crybaby. But, he's not a crybaby to be crying when he has to kill his parents. But, he ultimately tries to convince his dad to come out of this devil form, but he's ultimately unable to prevail, and Akira has to kill this devil and his father. But then after that, we just kind of get some more stuff. We get to see another character. Well, not another. We get to see her a little bit. Her name is Miko, but her name is actually Miki. But she's called Miko because she goes to the same school as Miki Makimura, and they are friends. But Miko secretly kind of despises Miki because Miki took her name, and though they are of similar skill, she's just less renowned and all that, and she feels lesser than Miki Makimura. And we see one day she's kind of out watering her snapdragons, and this dude walks by and he's talking with her, and he's like, yo, do you know Miki Makimura? They're kind of talking and discussing. She obviously gets jaded and runs off. However, this man ends up coming back to her, and they end up yapping a little bit more, and he ends up rapping to her because he's one of the rapper kids that was out on the bridge. And it's honestly a really cute scene. He gets to rap to her, she gets to cry because it was so heartfelt and all that. We learned that his name's Mayuta, and they ultimately end up kind of connecting and building a little bit of a relationship. Then they end up going to a Sabbath party, and they go to the Sabbath party. They obviously get crazy, wild, and all that stuff, taking drugs and everything. And during the Sabbath party, Miko is taken by a demon. And another individual, well, we actually don't even know if this happened at the Sabbath. There's two individuals who look very similar. We have Koda and Mayuta. Koda and Mayuta look very similar, yet they're different people. So I don't know if Koda actually got the demon from this Sabbath party, but he ultimately ends up getting a demon, and he's another star runner. But after this, we see Miko drastically change. We see that she becomes an even more, prestigious runner, and she now has the goal of beating Miki. so she can regain her name. And after this, we also see as Coda. We get a little bit backstory about Coda and all of that. We get to see his life prior to like the events of this, and who he is as a person. But we also learn that he's just a very elite runner. He's known as a super high schooler, and he is prepared to go into like this big relay race event that's happening soon. And so is Miko. So everything kind of prepares, and we see as Rio ultimately plans to reveal the existence of devils at this point in the story. So, at this point, eventually at the race, so that they can humanity can actively work to eradicate the devils. And we see as Akira kind of agrees to help him with this because Akira is a runner as well, so he will be at the event no matter what. And we see that they plan ultimately to use like this infused drink to bring out the devil in Coda, so they can reveal to the populace that, devils are real and we need to get rid of them. So they ultimately end up going to the event. Everything's going down. We see as Miki and Miko ultimately talk a little bit, and they make an agreement that if one of them, I think it's like wins or runs faster or something like that, then they will get to keep their name or lose their name. And in Miki's case, obviously losing her name. In Miko's case, it'll be regaining her name. But yeah, so we ultimately see as this events play out. We see as the race begins, and we briefly see as Akira goes in like the locker room. He's talking with Koda. He's like, man, I just need to yap with Koda. And ultimately, Koda kind of gets a little bit mad, pushing him off and leaving. So Akira is unable to get the water to Koda. However, this does not stop the plan, because Rio ultimately ends up getting with a broadcasting station that Coda is sponsored with, and he ultimately gets to drink him a bottle of water, because he's like, you got to do this since this is part of your contract, and he ends up doing it. And we see as they go out on the field, everything's gonna kind of going as planned. All of the races happening, and everything. We see as everyone does well, but then ultimately we see as Coda gets getting like flashbacks to the Sabbath party. Actually, I don't know if they were actually played in reality by Rio or if he was just seeing them. But we ultimately see as he turns into his devil form, starts rampaging around the arena and starts like blasting people, because he kind of looks like it's a triceratops looking, rhinoceros looking devil. And he goes around killing a bunch of people, and we just kind of see mass outbreaks of just slaughter. And we ultimately see as Akira lures this dude off into a garage area of the arena, and he escapes. But now humanity knows that devils are real, and that they are a thing, and that Rio is now like the head of this discussion, since he has revealed the stuff like this, and he's kind of talked about it and admitted to this, that these are devils. So we see this, and ultimately Akira is asked to kill off the devil. However, he doesn't. He ends up saving him and finding him a place to live while he can wait for all this to go over. However, this leads to mass hysteria in the humans. They begin to believe that everyone is a devil. They start accusing others. They start burning down places, killing other people. We kind of see people just start going crazy and everything. And we see as the Makimura family is getting kind of scared, and they are just kind of go about their things, being worried, obviously, and everything. But we also then see a little bit more of Akira and Koda interacting. We see as they kind of talk and ultimately kind of reveal to each other the plan, what's everything's going on. And Akira reveals to Koda how he can't go back to the stadium, because Koda wants to stay at the stadium because he's an athlete and he wants to be there, and it's torture for him to be in this little confined area. But he's on a rooftop. But it's ultimately not safe for him to do so. But then we see as Miko ends up pulling up and fighting Akira for a little bit, but ultimately she's quelled and she stays up there with Koda so they can race around and do whatever activities they want to. But we also see as Miko just kind of travels about a little bit prior to this, but it's nothing really important. But then this happens. But also then after that we see as the Makimura family, the mother and the son, whose name is Taro, who's a younger brother, we see as they kind of go out and they're just doing their thing, going throughout. And at one point they're shopping for groceries, and the mother's kind of talking with some friends and acquaintances about stuff that's going down, transpiring, and all that stuff about who's the devil and everything. And the mother turns around and walks over back to Taro, and Taro has eaten someone's dog. Taro has a devil in him. So she freaks out after this, and she calls the rest of the Makimura family, the father and Miki, and she's like, I can't, for the love of my family and for the protection of Taro, I cannot come back to the house, so I'm going away. And so she ultimately goes away and tries to find spiritual help for Taro. She ends up going to this preacher dude and everything, and he's preaching over all of them. And we see also as they all kind of prepare, and ultimately Miki's father's yo, I'm gonna go look for him now, because I can't stay here. I gotta go find them. So he ends up going to look for him. Miki and Akira are left with keeping kind of the house down and secure. And then it progresses along. And throughout all of this, we're kind of seeing like a demon association. Like, they're not really ever important. They just kind of get a couple of scenes, but like the devil association is kind of a thing. And they've been profiting off of this a little bit because they're not really profiting, but they are more free now since everyone knows what devils are. And people aren't really well equipped to deal with them at the moment. But we see as he ultimately ends up finding them. And during this, he is sees them as a thing, and they're at the preaching station. However, during this, Taro gets hungry, and he shapes into his demon form and eats his mother. And then after this is when the father finds him, and he's obviously terrified that his son has turned into a demon, that his wife has been devoured, and he is left to try and kill him. However, we see as the military pulls up on him, and they're like, "Get away, step down." He's like, "I can't. This is my wife and son," and they just end up blasting and sliming him out, and then they go and try and kill the others, but Akira ends up figuring out what's going on. He pulls up, is able to save Taro, the little demon, but I believe he ultimately ends up getting killed anyway, so we don't see him again, and he ends up carrying him off. So throughout all of this, we see as he ultimately ends up coming back to the house, and during this, we see as an announcement gets released after they come back to the house. We also see as some of the rap group had come to Miki's house, because Miki at one point was in a shopping center, and she got pursued by these devil hunters, and the rap group ultimately ended up saving her, so they end up escaping, returning to Miki's house to act kind of like a defense force. And during this, he get a message, and Rio has released to the world that the devil men do exist, that people can exist but also have devils in them, and how Akira Fudo is one of them. So we are obviously curious about what is going on, because at the beginning of all of this, Akira had been commanded by Rio to kind of stay with him and do his bidding. However, Akira went against this. So at first, I had presumed it was kind of like a Griffith situation, where Akira was kind of rubbed the wrong way by what Akira had done by not staying with him and being close to him. Just kind of how Griffith was enraged about how Guts left him. So kind of something like that. But we later learned on that this was not the case. But we honestly see as everything goes on, and we see as people start to come to the Makimura house in pursuit of Akira. But ultimately, all of this ends up kind of boiling over, and we see as what exactly was we see as this happens, and we see as the rap group kind of turns on Akira, because they're like, "You're a demon. We will deal with you if you do not leave." And he ultimately ends up proving that he is okay, and he takes Miki with him, and they end up going off. And then we also see as Miko ultimately ends up grouping with them, and she ends up joining with them as well, because she obviously has her devil now, and she's got a spider devil. But we see this, and then they just kind of get together, and after that, we see as Akira is actually pursued by a bunch of demons, because the demons have came out now. They're going crazy, they're doing their own thing, and they come and attack Akira, so Akira ends up getting away, fighting them. And during this, we see as a group ends up actually finding Miki. And throughout all of this, we see as she is trying to escape, and Miko is helping her throughout all the way, but then ultimately she ends up getting caught. Miko herself does, and Miko ultimately ends up getting killed. Now, before all of this, while they were kind of huddling down, staying in the house and all of that, Miko had revealed to her that yes, she did hate Miki for taking her name, but she had also loved her at the same time, because they had been good friends, and she'd always been kind and loyal to her and everything. But this makes her sacrifice a little bit more sad there at the end. But as they're going. Ultimately, Miki is gunned down as well. This is before Akira can catch up, because he knows what's going on. He's trying to go and get him, but he is unsuccessful in doing so. And so ultimately, he ends up flying over to the Makimura house, where he sees people parading Miki's limbs and head, extremities, body on pikes, and just chanting and everything. This obviously enrages him. He just goes to town and kills all those people. But while all this is going on, we're seeing as Rio is going about, and Rio's kind of figuring stuff out. He's going and learning at the Sabbath party. He's like, why did I ever turn Akira into Amon and the Devilman? And we kind of see this. Also, hold up. I absolutely forgot something. We're going to go back to it briefly. But between Akira's parents getting killed and the race stuff and the relationship stuff between Mayuda and Miko, we actually get to see as Akira fights this one devil woman. Her name is Cyrene, and she was wanting to have relations with Amon, so she had a benefit to her to turn Akira fully into a devil, but it didn't end up working. That's kind of where we get to see a little bit more of like the devil association people. But back to what we're talking about. But yeah, Ryo's kind of going about and he's looking into things, and he's slowly coming to the realization that all of this doesn't really connect. Like, he doesn't know why he did this or like what the devils are caused by. And when he goes back to the South American area where he is looking around, he sees a statue and it looks eerily like him. And then we see a gold like beam blast just going like the whole world almost. And then after this we progress along and we ultimately learn that Ryo is Lucifer, he's Satan. We get to learn that he was the fallen angel, so he's the biblical version of, well, he who is who the biblical character is. And I'm just going to keep calling him Ryo anyways, but yeah, we learned this, and that is why he's been trying to perpetuate devils, because he was reborn as this child, and once he came in contact with Akira, he began to slowly perpetuate the reconquest of the earth by the devils. And all of this is kind of playing out because of this innate desire of Ryo's to turn the world back into like a devil paradise, even though he didn't know it. So he kind of like amnesia or something like that. It's not really explained. But after this, we see as Akira ends up meeting back up with Ryo after he is killed, after Miki has been killed, and Ryo explains all this to him, and obviously Akira is outraged because Miki has died because of Ryo and his actions. So he ends up getting really angry, turning into Devilman, and they start having a clash. And we get to see Ryo's true form, which is like a 12-winged angel-looking thing, because, I mean, Lucifer is an angel, but a fallen angel. So we see this happen. They have a quite a large scuffle. They're kind of going about, but we also see as some of the other devils come in and fight with Akira, but we also then see as other devil men come in and help fight against the other devils, while Akira and Ryo are left to fight alone. And this is a pretty good fight. We see it kind of go crazy a little bit. We see as Ryo kind of lose some of his, Akira loses some of his limbs, and he ends up having other like devil men throw him limbs, which he reattaches and then fights with him, which is really cool. But ultimately, in the end, Akira is defeated, and we get like a flashback of Ryo and all that. We get to see is how they grew up and everything, all the events of their childhood would let them to grow so connected. And this is all while Akira is talking. No, not Akira. Ryo, the blonde-headed one, is talking to Akira on like this beach side. We see they're both kind of laying there, and I keep calling Ryo Akira. Oh my gosh, Ryo is laying there and they're discussing, but Akira's not saying anything. And we've seen throughout all of this, like, while all this is going down, and before, like, Akira was fighting Ryo directly, that, like, the world is getting destroyed. Devils are destroying everywhere. It's calling mass chaos, and ultimately they end up finding the last bastion of humanity and wiping them out. The devils do. And then that's after that's when the Akira and Ryo fight ends up happening. And we see they're laying on the coast, and we see there's a bunch of red water everywhere, and they're talking, and Ryo eventually turns over to Akira. He's like, why am I the only one speaking? And then we see that Ryo and Akira has been bisected down the center at the horizontal line of like the waist. So he is dead, and then we see as Ryo realizes what he's done and begins to grovel in the consequences of his actions. Then after that, we zoom out to see the world. We see it getting bombed with like the luminous light that hit Akira while he was in that village. And that's kind of where the story ends. We get a third impact level event, and then it's wraps. But yeah, I really ended up, the story, it was a little overhyped in my opinion. Like, I had heard a lot of hype behind it, but I did really enjoy it. That's not to undermine it, because I did really enjoy it. I enjoyed the kind of, like, not knowing what was going on for the first half, and then being like, whoa, this came out of nowhere, but it was also, like, foreshadowed too. So it was cool to see. I did like the characters. I liked Akira post acquisition of Amon. Because I didn't really like him at first, but then he got Amon, and I was like, hey, this is a pretty cool character. And it was just cool to see all the characters throughout, see how they grew, see who died, because literally everyone died, besides Ryo. But yeah, it was a really good story. I liked the symbolism of it. I liked how, in the end, it kind of had the theme of when striving for one's ambitions, if you sacrifice everything, you'll be left alone in the end, and how, I guess, pursuit of ambition in a sinful way will lead you to a life of loneliness and perpetual hell. But, yeah, that was just, like I said, a really pretty good story. I would recommend watching it. It's only 10 episodes, so I mean, it won't take too much time out of your life. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about Devilman Crybaby. I did really like the art style too. It had a very unique art style that I haven't really seen elsewhere, but I haven't watched too much anime as well. I've only been watching anime consistently for like 3 years now. But yeah, I honestly think next one I'm probably going to watch is I'm either going to watch some anime movies or I'm going to watch Baki Hanma, which that'll probably end up winning out. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about Devilman Crybaby, and all I really have for episode 74 of is it 74? Yeah, it's 74. Episode 74 of Show For You. So thank you very much for watching.